to Joshua chapter 4. In the Old Testament, the book of Joshua chapter 4. And I'll read our introduction, as I'll try and do this each week for the duration of this series. If you've ever learned to play a sport or taken up a new personal interest, you'll know how satisfying it is, or it can be, to reach a significant goal. As well as learning something new, you've been changed for the better, and that's an empowering thought. Good habits lie behind many of these positive changes. The repeated actions, like a daily exercise routine, for example, helps you to build the change into your daily life. And in this study, we'll learn how good habits can help you grow spiritually as well as personally. As we begin this new year, you're more likely to achieve worthwhile goals if you've developed good habits. And by way of incentive, this is the great part, our church is offering to those of you who listen to each of these messages in this series, that would be either in person or on YouTube, a diploma upon completion. For those of you fortunate enough to be able to attend each service during the 9-week series, you'll be given that diploma with an honors distinction. How many of you were here last week? And you're here again. Okay, you're going for it so far. Well done. Keep up the good work. The goal is that we will all develop godly and Christ-like habits in our lives, something we should all desire and by God's grace achieve as we apply these biblical principles in our lives. Last week we began the series, and the first message in the series was on inquisitiveness. That's what we talked about, how we needed to be always asking and always learning and desiring to learn. Today we continue with the next message entitled Reflection. This is the second habit under the second skills section that we want to learn about. Reflection. When it comes to reflection, some people look back at reflection and they think of the good old days. I do that on occasion. In fact, I saw a menu this week. I'll put it up here on screen so you can see it. This is an old McDonald's menu. Do you remember when prices were this cheap? Probably not. McDonald's hadn't even come to Britain by this time. But just look at that. A quarter pounder for 70p. A Big Mac for 65. Makes me hungry thinking, you know how many of those I could eat really at that price? Oh, it'd be fantastic. Coffee was 15p. It is amazing to think. And then they used to have this, I remember these, the triple ripple ice cream cones. They did away with that, I think, when they created these hot apple pies and things, and that took over a bit more. But it's amazing when you think. This is what some people think of when they think of reflection. I can't actually say that that's always the best thing to do, because it can put us into a miserable mood. But if you look with me in the Bible this morning, look at Joshua chapter 4, and let's begin reading in verse 1. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests stood, and to carry them over with you, and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he'd appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of Israel, to serve as a sign among you," or a memorial, we might say. "In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it crossed the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. A memorial, something that would actually stand for something and be a reminder to you. Now, I don't know about you, but I do like to reflect upon times in my life, what I have done, and I try to journalize this. In fact, I brought them this morning, just because this is, I brought all of them for the last 20 years, so you can have a good idea of how this looks. But I like multiple mounts of journals for different things. So this is what I do. Beginning and from the bottom, these are the thick journals here, are the journals that I write in when I'm at home. And I try and make an entry of it every single night and try to just talk about the things I did today. Some of it's silly. You'll see my handwriting. My daughters can't read it, so I'm not worried about them, delving into it. But, and then this is the one I'm working on at present. And because I love fountain pens, I enjoy changing the color with each entry. So I have several pens with different inks, and that way I can keep track of those things. And occasionally I have something of memory that I want to stick in here, like a letter that someone gave me that was encouraging or something to that sort. And I'll keep those in there as well. But I keep these journals also when I travel, because it's obviously a bit big to carry that. If I'm traveling, I carry these with me. I finished this one this last year, and it's my travel journal that I'll keep with me if I go to Tuva or someplace else. This is the one I have. And in the front of it, I will mention all the life events that took place. I have down here, Bethany, my bride. So this is actually when I got married, is when I started this one, on the 14th of April, 2001. That's our anniversary date, if you need to know. No. It's also a good birthday reminder. Deborah Rose was born, Rebecca Joy, Esther Karen, Hannah Marie, they're all in here. And then it was also inducted as minister at Rosedale Free Now Community Church. Rosedale, Cheshunt, the 25th of October, 2008. All of those events are scrolled in the front if they're life-changing for me. And I'll write those. I've started a new one, and that I've just barely started, so that's the new year. But then I've got one more. This is the one I take with me on holiday. So this is my holiday journal. Everything that we do while we're away on holiday, I try and keep track of where it is. And then once a year, when I go away to Buckfest, I take the year's journal with me and I read what has happened over the period of the year. You'd be surprised. Your emotions go up and down. You get excited remembering the good things, and you begin to cringe again thinking about the things that were difficult. But it is a reflection upon what your year has been like, and that's a good thing to do. Another way to reflect upon another way to reflect, and another useful means, is by making them tangible reminders of prayer. Now, I don't know about you, but I have several things in my home, especially in my study, that I have put up, which are tangible reminders to me to pray for things. Here's one of them. Just over my computer, that's what this light is. I know the lighting isn't brilliant here on it, but you'll see this watch hanging. And just underneath, or just above it, has also been given to me. This was a refrigerator magnet, which I took the magnet off and mounted it to the wall. And that's a map of Tuva. And underneath it is the watch that was given to me by the young lad when I was at Tuva on my last evening. I never changed the time. I hung it up, and it's a constant reminder of what time it is in Tuva, and also to pray for them. And it is a regular thing that I will do. Also, just to the left of this up on the wall are the two musical instruments I was given. This one is the Morin Kur, as they're called in Mongolia. That was given to me by my translator, whose boyfriend made it by hand. And it's mounted up on my wall. And every time I see it, I remember to pray for the Mongolian missions. The one on the right, which I asked for this because I saw it was broken sitting in the garage out at Belgazin. And as I knew I'd be returning, I said, I would love to have that old broken instrument. And of course, Sergei, who gave it to me, couldn't cope with the idea of giving it to me broken, so he repaired it completely, put new strings and a new bridge and everything, and said, yes, I'll give it to you to take back with you, tuned it and everything. But it is a constant reminder to me to pray for the ministry, especially amongst those who are recovering alcoholics and drug addicts in the back countryside of Tuva. And these are just, for me, you said they're lovely wall decoration, but they're also, every time I see them, reminders to me to pray for them. That's what Joshua was doing. He didn't want these things forgotten. And he said, take these stones out of the river Jordan, stack them up, 12 of them, one from each of your tribe. So you can't say, oh, we weren't involved in that. All of you were involved. And he says, stack them up in that way when your children see them. This is another thing. When your children see those stones, tell them the story of the miracle that God performed in bringing the children of Israel through the Jordan River into the promised land. It was a tremendous testimony. For me, when my kids can see those, I can tell them the story of how God allowed me to get to a country I knew nothing about, to be able to bring the gospel to them, and how God blessed it, gave us as a church an opportunity to build a yurt for them, for their Sunday school. The stories are endless, and they're not even finished because of the connection that was made between us. God led that, and this is a memorial and a reflection. This is a habit. This is a skill. This is a foundational principle that we all need in our lives to be able to build upon these things. Right now, sometimes we consider ourselves to be strong in mind and in character. We say things like, oh, I'll never forget. I'll never forget that instance. But we do forget. We do forget. And when we're reminded, we remember. But otherwise, unless we have something tangible that will bring it to our minds, we will often forget. We have every good intention when somebody says, would you pray for me? We say, yes, of course I'll pray for you. And then we forget. We don't mean to forget. It isn't because we're suffering from some disease that causes us to forget. It's because the world is full of distractions and our life is full of distractions. And these things take our minds and attentions away from our good intentions. But God says, I want you to remember these things. Make them tangible. Make them so that you can pray for them and keep them in the forefront of your mind. I also have a bracelet. Some of you may have seen this and wondered why in the world I have it on. It's one of those kind of youthy looking things, that kids wear. It's all been woven. And when I was in Tuva at the English school, the school where they were teaching English to students, and I was there, they were making these as craft, or there was a day when they spent some time on them. And one of the young ladies who that was with us on the tour ended up, actually one of the teachers went that evening and spent the whole evening making one for me. And I had been asked throughout the day, and I have no idea what when. What are your favorite colors? And I told them. And so she wove it, my favorite colors. And I put it on in June, and I have never taken it off. I told them that I wouldn't until it falls off my wrist. But it will remind me constantly to pray for them. Many of those young people didn't know the Lord. It was an outreach to teach English to kids, and I can remember to pray for them. Each of those specific ministries I'm not suggesting you do all the same things, but I'm saying whatever it takes to help you remember. You've seen the old thing, tying a little string around your finger, to remind you, and they can't remember why you tied it there. But many people will write things on their hands. Whatever it takes for you to help you remember the things. If God pulls you through an event, and you need to remember that He's able to do that for the next time you get into a difficult situation, do something to remind yourself. And we sing songs, or we've sung hymns in the past. Count your blessings. Name them one by one. It will surprise you what the Lord has done. It was the old hymn writer, because it will surprise us when we remember the things God has brought us through, the victories we have seen. And when we get down and we get discouraged and we say, oh, God doesn't care, and is He even there? And remind yourself. See these things and say, yes, absolutely. There's no way that would have happened apart from His intervention. Or, can I just say, His existence. I know He's real. And these are constant reminders to me of the fact that He is real. So one of the key points in reflection is looking back in time. Keeping a journal is one way. The tangible reminders is another. Looking back and remembering what God has done for you. There's another thing that we might consider when it comes to reflection as well. Maybe this is even the first thing that came to your mind when you heard the word. And that's looking back at yourself. Looking in the mirror and a reflection. Would you turn with me to another place in the scripture? Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. If you need to find it, remember this, and it always helps. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. I always like doing that, because I can always find Psalms. It's right in the middle of my Bible. Proverbs is the next one over, so Ecclesiastes is easy. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. We're going to begin reading in verse 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 12. The teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be strengthened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I've grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who's ruled over Jerusalem before me. I've experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of the madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. It's very interesting. And you say, those aren't exactly encouraging words, John. When Solomon would look back upon his own life, he saw himself as being truthfully the wisest man who'd ever lived. If not wise, just, he was also the wealthiest man, the wealthiest king. And he received favor from all these adjoining nations who came to him, as you remember, the Queen of Sheba did, to be able to come to try him, to see if he really is clever and really is as wise as everyone said he was, and then coming away with the testimony of saying, no, he's not as wise as everyone says he is. He's wiser than that. He's beyond what I could have ever expected. I went thinking, oh, he's probably going to be good, but he blows my mind. And the wisdom of Solomon has transcended even religious contexts. You get into the secular world and people will talk about the dividing of the child. Do you remember one of Solomon's wisest things. Whose child is it? Will it divide it in half, give one to the other? And, that type of wisdom is actually used in secular psychology. The wisdom that Solomon had, which he says, and we read, was given to him by God, didn't just come up from within him. He looks at it and says, I've got wealth. Shall we talk about wives? What was it, 999 of them or whatever? Goodness me. Good thing you didn't believe in divorce. That'd be a lot of alimony, wouldn't it? But, I remember one Southern preacher saying he had 999 too many vanity tables at his house. But the idea of it was he certainly had anything some people would ever want in the whole world. And he looked at it and he says at another point, and it's all vanity. It's all useless. You say, oh, that's an old book and that's an old story. Okay, let's talk about the newspaper today. Didn't somebody two people win the lottery? Couldn't wait. They said it was actually the computer struggled with the national lottery because so many people buying tickets. The system was struggling to keep up with how many people bought it because they were going after, 54 million pounds? Incredible amount of money. Some people's idea, though, would be, if I only had even a portion of that money, everything that I ever wanted would be gone. Is it? Really? Because when you get it, like he had it, he steps back from it and he says, no satisfaction. There's no feeling of fulfillment. It didn't do for me what I hoped it would do. I had this expectation that if only I could, and then when I got it, it didn't. It's kind of like empty feeling, Just didn't have. It's like eating a food that has no taste. You ever look at something and say, "Oh, I really would love to have a bite of that"? Ever gone into a restaurant and looked at the glass case and seen something and said, "Ooh, I don't know, that looks really lovely. Can I have one of those?" And I've had this, as you have, multiple times, They get the piece of cake, they sit down, and halfway through the meal, you're looking at them, and half the cake's still sitting there, uneaten. You say, have you not finished your cake? No, it wasn't what I was expecting. It looked, but when I tasted it was like, no, it's okay. We go back for the things that we know taste good. Children, you get a toddler, they pull out a lovely big toy, you spent loads of money on it, and they put it down and they jump in the box. What? Because the box is fun to play with. It's good fun and it'll never change. Do you remember the verse? Luke chapter 12, verse 15. A man's wealth consists not in the abundance of the things that he possesseth. I love it. King James is best. It's my favorite, always. A man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things that he possesseth. Sorry, I should pass out two rows. That's why we keep this row empty. That's the spitting row. In case I start quoting King James verses. But it's true. It isn't our wealth, our being, our happiness, our popularity, our satisfaction is not because of the multiple things that we own. If only I had a new laptop, iPad, iPhone, whatever, if only I had a new car, a new job, if I only had a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, if I only had, healthy grandkids, and it all happens and you go, it didn't do it. It didn't do it. He is the only thing, the only one who will ever satisfy us. Always. And then you can have nothing and smile. Nothing and smile. As I prepare for the idea in 3 years' time of possibly, Lord willing, going to a country like North Korea, and I think about that, and I meditate on it, and I say, what would it be like if actually I lost everything. And I thought to myself, follow-up thought, do you know that's impossible? I can't lose everything. It's impossible. They can't take it away from me. I could, within the context of anything that life happened to throw my way, I say this in a strong moment. I realize that in weakness, when things happen, you can certainly feel low. But I know when I rest upon the solid rock of the truth, I know that nothing can take away what I have in Christ. Nothing. Can't take away my happiness, my satisfaction, the source of my wealth. I could tell you stories, you could tell me stories of how there have been times in our lives, some of us, who have, when we've lost everything. And now, however long later, we have twice or three times as much as we had that we lost, because God is capable. I read a story yesterday about a 93-year-old man who ran park run yesterday. He ran his 100th park run yesterday. He's 93. Do you know when he took up running? That was climactic. Thank you for that. He took up running at the age of 62. That was the first time he'd ever run in his life at 62. Now at 93, he's completed his 100th park run. In case you needed a little inspiration for the new year. It's not too late to start. But looking back at yourself, the satisfaction, we sometimes feel, no, I'm all washed up, it's all over, I can't do it anymore. You can. In fact, these are foundational principles. Being willing and interested and wanting to be inquisitive and to learn and to reflect and look upon the things that have happened in our life, the lessons we have learned, both good and bad, what we have learned in our lives, and remind ourselves of them. There is a prayer that the psalmist prayed. He did this quite often. Search me, O God, he prayed, and know my thoughts. Search me, O God, and know my ways. Try me, know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. It was a constant prayer. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. I don't believe the psalmist was bragging when he said that. Some do. I don't believe he was bragging, saying, go on, search me. I think he was praying for help, that God would help him. Search my heart, search my thoughts. Whatever's there that shouldn't be, put it right. Whatever's there that should be, amplify it. Make it louder, make it bigger. Whatever it is, Lord, but lead me in the way that's everlasting, that will last. Not this temporary satisfaction things that will give me just a little bit of what I want. Give me the thing that will quench and satisfy the thirst of my soul, not just my body. Give me that which will spring up in me and be everlasting. Lead me in the way everlasting. One commentator wrote this. I communed with mine own heart literally. I spoke with my heart, saying, when successful in my researches, but not happy in my soul, though easy in my circumstances, I entered into my own heart, and there inquired the cause of my discontent. And this is what he found. He found that though, 1, he had gotten wisdom beyond all men, 2, wealth and honors more than any other, 3, practical wisdom more than all of his predecessors, 4, he had tried all manner of pleasure and gratification, even to their extremes, yet after all this he had nothing but vexation of spirit. None of these 4 things nor the whole of them combined could afford him such a happiness as satisfies the soul. Why was all of this? Because the soul was made for God, and in the possession of him alone can it find happiness. Some will search their entire life for happiness, contentment, wealth, satisfaction, popularity. They will search and they will be willing to give up anything to have it. If they are fortunate enough to obtain it, they will find nothing but dissatisfaction. I haven't read stories in history or in tabloids of anyone who's obtained all of those things that many of us desire, who ever talk about being satisfied with it. The wealthiest men who lived, when asked the question, how much do you need, always said a little more, because there was no satisfaction in it. The same is true with us. If we go to the Lord and start with him, we will find satisfaction for our souls. We will be able to have peace of heart and mind to sleep and rest, knowing that we have everything that we need. Amen. Let's pray.